Good morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ham, coming to you as always from the Spotlight Studios here in Morristown, New Jersey. My guest today is a marketing vet with 2 decades of advertising expertise tucked under his belt. He's had the ability to grow from some of the most talented marketers in the business while working in New York City. His extensive experiences include previously working with Verizon Wireless for nearly 10 years, helping turn them into one of the most respected companies in the world. He also worked on the original iPhone launch and has built 2 multi-million-dollar companies from the ground up by creating radical marketing results. He's the founder and CEO of Radical, as well as the founder of the GVL Hustle and Comradery Co-work, and the host of the Radcast, one of the fastest growing marketing podcasts in the country. He's appeared on Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, and now the Morning Spotlight. He is Ryan Alford. Ryan, welcome.
What's up, Mike? That is easily the best introduction I think I've ever gotten on a podcast. I've been on several, and I was both beaming and embarrassed a little bit, but I do appreciate it. It definitely summarized a lot of what I've done, but I'm real appreciative of being here with you.
Of course, yeah. I mean, this is just payback, right? So, like, you had me on your show talking about Clubhouse and like a bunch of other stuff, and I actually have now, because the whole coolest guy in title insurance, like, you coined the phrase. So that's for the spotlighters out there. This is who coined the phrase "coolest guy in title insurance." That is now part of like the whole branding thing that I'm trying to put out, for the show. So I'm very appreciative of that as well. And then,
I like it.
Yeah, and it's always a little bit intimidating, to be honest. I mean, I have the Spotlight Studios, which are what they are here. This may or may not be a green screen behind me, but over there, I'm always very jealous of people that come in with like legit studios. And like what your studio, I mean, I've seen the Instagram pages and all that, and I am super jealous of what you guys got going on. It's so cool. It's definitely rad for sure.
Hey, it's funny. If you have the name as a company and a business as Radical, and you run the Radcast, we've got to have the look, to go with it. So there's got to be some sizzle with the steak, or steak with the sizzle. I'm not sure which one it is.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I got my Radcast sweatshirt on, which, I got after coming on your guys' show.
Yes. Yeah. That's one of our lasting impressions we like to leave. We send merchandise out to all our guests, and we just like to both deliver a message and a gift of thanks, as well as shameless branding. So.
Right. I'm all about shameless plugs here, so I have make no bones about just putting on the sweatshirt for the show. I mean, I did like a Instagram posts about it several times. So
yes, and we appreciate it. I've had a couple of people now ask me, friends, are going, "Where's my sweatshirt, dude?" I'm like, hey, they're on Shopify. You can buy one.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right. So we did the bio thing. We kind of got some of like the background out of the way. And so I just want to kind of like get into some of the stuff that you came on here to talk about.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of business stuff. We do a lot of real estate stuff here on the Morning Spotlight. One of the things on the one sheet that I got before this that Riley had sent over, on the top, it has 3 things that would describe you: entrepreneur, influencer, and marketing maverick. So if you don't mind, explain what a marketing maverick is.
It's I think it's a risk taker. I'll delve into kind of my philosophy on marketing, and there's many layers to marketing now, especially with all the channels and all the things. And in some ways, everything is marketing, but I think of it as both art and science. And today's world has gotten very caught up in what's known as performance marketing, very analytical driven, data driven, and it's smart, making decisions on data. I believe in it, but I'm definitely this cross, no different than by my age. I'm both analog and digital. I grew up in analog, but kind of came through digital, not to detour too far. But the same thing with marketing. 20 years ago when I first started, it was very art driven, very creative driven. And this world that we ventured into is very science, data, performance driven. And everybody wants ROI. We understand that at Radical as an agency, and in no fault to anyone that's wanting to do that. But marketing and advertising is very much a blend of art and science. And I fall towards more of taking risk and leveraging the creative side of marketing with the assistance of data. I think, and I'm very much, I'm not like a jump out of the plane parachute guy, like risk taker.
Right.
I think some of that's like quasi, testosterone or whatever the female version of that is, fake chutzpah. I don't know. I'm more of a I think a real risk taker, like in the fact of, starting companies and different things like that, and not being afraid to challenge the status quo. I'll encapsulate it perfectly for you in my career, which has actually been in the last 3 years of what I would call a marketing maverick. So one of my friends who I train with, I work out, fitness is very important to me. He's a dentist. He is the nicest guy you'd ever meet. He happens to be very attractive, has a very attractive wife. He just started his dentistry practice. And if you Google a certain term, I'm going to give it to you in just a moment. He also has the most or one of the top 5 watched videos in 2018 on Facebook in the world.
Okay. That sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
For a dentist in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah, you're right.
And what happened was he hired me to do his marketing when I first started Radical. I was helping small businesses, and he hired me. And I said, dude, you got to get your likeness out there. We got to build your personal brand. You're a dentist. Dentist marketing is boring. And, he started to get some confidence. I gave him a tripod, dude, film yourself, do different things. Well, he just happens to be a hell of a good dancer. I didn't know this about him at the time. It was a secret talent that I didn't know about. And his girls at his dentist office, there's this dance challenge called the In My Feelings Challenge by Drake, also known as the Shiggy Challenge because a comedian named Shiggy also made it famous. There's a debate of whether it's In My Feelings or the Shiggy Challenge. It's neither here nor there. But nonetheless, that challenge came about, and they said they knew Rich could dance. His name's Rich Constantine. And they said, Rich, you should dance to this. It was their idea. I mean, this was not my idea, but it was their idea. He, sent me some messages and says, hey, I was going to play around with this dance. I was like, oh, you haven't done it already? I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You do it. Like, this is exactly what a dentist needs to do. It's so still, so boring. Just break through. Anyway, he films himself. The girls gave him the idea. He films himself. He sends me a note saying, hey, and I'm already like managing his Facebook page or whatever. My phone starts just like blowing up. This thing went viral in like 5 hours and literally had 1 million views. He did the In My Feelings challenge and had like 1 million views. And I said, dude, he called me, or he said something. He sent me a text. He's like, what's going on? I said, dude, you're coming over to my house at 5:30. We're game planning a PR plan because this shit's going viral. And he came over, his wife came over with him. We sat at my dinner table, and I said, dude, you don't know what's happening right now, but I'm going to tell you what's happening. This is going viral, and we can do one of two things. A couple local papers might call you. They might get notice of this. Something might happen. Some of this is, the fire's lit a little bit. I was like, but do you want to pour some gasoline on this or not? You hired me. You just happened to hire a 17-year-old veteran in the agency game who'd been in New York working large days. Not many dentist friends has a friend like me that knows how to take advantage of these situations. And so that was just by happenstance, but nonetheless, I'm on the phone with my contacts in New York. We called ABC, NBC, all the major news networks. By Saturday, this was a Thursday, I think by Saturday, we were Skyping with NBC. We were on The View. We did Al Jazeera TV the next week, international. We're talking 500 million impressions off of one dance video online because the gas that we poured on it from a PR perspective. That is a marketing maverick, my friend.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's a good way to describe it, I think. Yeah.
And look, not only that, the conclusion of that is a 7-minute sit down. We're not talking about like a satellite. We went to LA, 7-minute sit down with Steve Harvey. We went on the Steve Harvey show. flew out to LA and went on the Steve Harvey show, did a 7-minute sit down. We handed Steve Harvey I came up with a tagline, just keep smiling. Came in a brand. We sold $50,000 worth of merchandise. Like this was like, this became my pet project for like 3 months because I just started Radical. And he was like one of my first clients or whatever.
Right.
And I'm helping a friend out more than anything.
Yeah.
But it just happened to all fall in place. And anyway, incredible story, but that's a marketing maverick. And it's like, again, I didn't come up with the idea of the dance challenge. The girls in his office knew about it. And I was like, this was exactly what we were trying to build to.
Right.
But it was more, how do we create something out of this and giving someone the confidence to create messaging and leverage, which is what this has done because his practice is quadrupled.
Right. Yeah.
As the day, and so anyone listening, go Google dancing dentist or Dr. C, which we've trademarked. He is now Dr. C officially. So there is the real life interpretation of marketing maverick. And that's how every client that I talk to, it's not always about doing something gimmicky or, stuff like that. I don't guarantee virality for every client.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the component of being a maverick. It's just knowing, and none of that had anything to do with data and science.
It was just like strike when the iron's hot, but you need to know when it's actually hot,
Yes.
Right.
And knowing when, you have leverage and when you have an opportunity, and also, having the confidence to push outside the norm. Because no dentist was doing now there's a lot of dentists dancing. We created a phenomenon. A lot of them really bad.
Yeah. But, you're the first, right? So like it's a pioneer, like a flagship dentist dancing. So awesome. So, all right, got the marketing maverick thing out of the way. And one of the things that you were talking about as you were going through that answer was one of the importances of building a brand, like a personal brand. And so not all of us are super good looking. Not all of us are incredible dancers. And I know that you said that it's not all about being gimmicky, but like, talk to us about the importance. I mean, it seems like pretty self-explanatory, but the importance of building a personal brand, because that's something that I'm trying to do and have been trying to do since I started the Morning Spotlight, because I work for a large title insurance company and trying to build my own personal brand within this larger corporate structure. So take us through something like that. Like, how do you kind of work with maybe individuals or companies to try to boost that brand?
Yeah. Every company or just about every company, I will say that it's not a one size fit all, but it's a one size fits most. And I'll not for self priority here, but I use my own personal brand as the example. And I practice what I preach, no difference in our agency. Nothing bothers me more than people that are social media agencies. And you go to their social media page, they have 4 posts, 2 followers, and some shitty graphics on it. I'm like, you're not a fucking social media agency. You're a hack. And no different. So we practice what we preach. I practice what I preach. I've spent 10 years building my personal brand because I knew the importance of building authority, building credibility in what I do. And so every client that I work with, I encourage them, and it's real hard in today's world, no matter how big or small the company is, to have a CEO or a forward-facing leader of the company be a hermit or be someone that doesn't want to be out there. I'm not saying it can't happen, or if your product's good enough or if you're differentiated enough, you certainly can. But it is the core of, I would say 95% of the opportunity is if you leverage your personal brand in an ability to, it's not about being good looking or being a certain skill. It's about authenticity and showing people a way to get to know you before they do business with you.
Right.
I mean, that's the simplest way I would describe it. And because people want to know who they're doing business with. And so if you're wanting to build your business, this is a way for them to see the good, bad, the ugly. It's not all about the positive stuff too. You be as transparent as you are. And if you aren't comfortable with that, can you still be in a business? Absolutely. But I'll tell you what, if you really want to light the fire and go faster, then you start with that personal brand.
Right. So one of the things that I've actually, for just coincidentally, been talking about authenticity quite a bit. That's a hard word to say. Talking about authenticity quite a bit. And I think that, like, to me, authenticity is one of those things that's just kind of gotten like twisted and gnarled up to kind of mean something totally different. So I think for me, like, I see people talk about authenticity and they're trying to think about, like, I need to be like covered in tattoos and like be the loudest guy in the room and, like always be like the life of the party and like all that kind of stuff. But that's not necessarily always what authenticity looks like. It's just who you are, right? So, like, is it harder to take the person that doesn't fit into that like loud box of authenticity and build a personal brand for them? Or is it more just kind of built like through trust and, just being themselves?
I think it's built through consistency. And, here's the biggest thing with building your personal brand. Does it happen quicker, perhaps, if you're a ball on fire all the time? Probably. I mean, that would be, I wouldn't be being authentic, having authenticity myself to say that. But I will say this: give me the guy or girl that will post 3 times a day for a year,
Yeah.
every day, the good, bad, and the ugly of their life, their business, or whatever, and it will happen. Like and what happens is people are not consistent. So I'll post something, or I'll only post the good news, or I'll only post the best picture, and I stick with it for a week. And then I go radio silent for 2 weeks.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, it doesn't work for me. It's not whatever. It has nothing. It's a crutch for people to go, well, I'm not that guy, or I'm not this girl, or I don't have this. That is a crutch and an excuse. It takes commitment to believing in it. And it's a brand. It's no different than, like, I had this exact discussion earlier this morning with someone. Marketing, activity is like branding or sales activation, usually one of the two. And personal branding is branding, and branding happens over time with consistency. And it doesn't happen overnight. And so what happens is people do it for 2 weeks, and then they see some success, and they measure it in vanity metrics instead of, knowing that it's a long-term play, and they get inconsistent. So though you give me someone that's consistent, and will make their personal brand stand out.
Right. Does it matter like where their potential audience potentially is? Like, if you're just like hammering Instagram, let's say, but their audience might be more on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
so if you're consistent as hell on Instagram, does it matter? Or is that just something you kind of like focus on at the very beginning? Like, listen, your audience is most likely on LinkedIn, so let's just be consistent there and build that authenticity and that personal brand there.
I believe in the 80-20 rule. So let's spend where, because what happens is 80% of your audience is usually one place or the other. There's obviously variation. And so focus there first. If your audience is on LinkedIn, then don't waste your time on TikTok.
Right.
And not because you shouldn't, don't get wrong. Like, this is all about resource. If you're, a well-funded startup, and you've got $50 million and 3 employees and a credible idea, then yeah, you can sprinkle this around. You need to do a little bit here, a little bit there, test some things, but focus on your core. And wherever your core audience, you start there. If it's LinkedIn, great. If it's Instagram, great. If it's Facebook, which still gets underappreciated. If people think Facebook's dead, Facebook's not dead. There's still so much scale on Facebook that I would say that 50% of the audience, no matter who you are, probably needs to start on Facebook. And that's like hypocrisy today, because people want to get like enamored with the shiny objects. But the reality is the billions of people are on Facebook, and the millions are on other. And so whether you're a business or a consumer, you might need to just double down on Facebook while it especially depending on your audience, because the fastest growing platform for 45 to 75-year-olds, and I'm going broader than they would probably say, they probably lump it like 55 to 70 or something like that, is still Facebook.
Yeah.
The most engagement's growing. And who makes a lot of the decisions for if you're in B2B?
Right.
A lot of 45 to 70-year-olds.
Yeah.
So but start where your audience is, and then test from there, like build it out from there. But here's what I'll say. My business and my core has always been probably more LinkedIn. I've been in the agency, when I worked for other people or working now and owning my own business, my audience has mainly been on LinkedIn, but I've built it through Instagram. And what I've found, and I do it on LinkedIn now too, but the first 5 years I focused in on Instagram, and I've been doing it for 10 years. I've found that it's a more personal Facebook-like, audience there. I don't know how many 58-year-old CEOs are definitively on Instagram,
Right.
but the benefits and ancillary benefits that I've seen through Instagram, the credibility that it's built for me through the platform there, has paid more than enough dividends. It just happens to be that I might have started on the wrong platform, but once it started growing, I stayed there.
Yeah.
So, but now I'm probably more on LinkedIn from a everyday standpoint.
Right. Gotcha. All right. So, just a real quick side note, the marketing thing. At what point did you think that you had like an interest in marketing? Because I know you've been in marketing for a long time. Were you just like always like a creative guy? Were you just somebody that liked to kind of be out in front of people, or build up your own brands? Like what kind of got you started in the marketing world?
I was probably one of the few people. It was my major in college. I went to Clemson University, go Tigers. And the Alfords, my dad's side of the family, are all entrepreneurs or salespeople in some way. A lot of them are, not all successful at all times per se, but they're very entrepreneuristic. And my parents, I grew up, and my parents literally had like 3 side hustles at all times. My mom was like an insurance agent. My dad was in sales, but they had like 3 side gigs going. Like they literally had a company called Floral Fantasies, and it was in our playroom at our house. They made silk arrangements, and my dad's very handy. He would go out and cut tree stalks, and he'd put silk things to make those trees that probably mainstream now, like a tree that's got the silk leaves. They looked real, but
Yeah,
because it's a real stalk or whatever. They would spend their spare time doing that, or going to like home and garden shows and doing stuff. That times, 3 other things. So always had that kind of around me, that notion. I mean, we had more yard sales than any family in the face of the world should ever fucking have. Like, we're that family, like on the block.
Yeah,
every other weekend we're having a yard sale. I'm like, where does this shit come from? Like, I never had any, they're like, the collector stuff, like Transformers, G.I. Joes. I probably had thousands of dollars worth of that stuff. That shit got sold at the yard sale before I could even think about like collecting anything. Like my mom, if something sat for more than like a day in my room, it's in the yard sale pile. Yep. We had like 17 yard sales every weekend over summer. Like, like we're crowding up the street in our neighborhood. It's like, holy shit. Like how many people can we have in the day? And everybody kind of looks at us when we walk around town. Like, you guys, you gonna have another yard sale on Saturday and they're gonna park in my yard? Like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, it came by me natural, the sales and marketing side of things. I kind of grew up around 2 entrepreneurs. Even though they mainly worked for other people, they always had side gigs. And so I think I came by it naturally. And then I was like, I'm going to go into marketing when I go to Clemson. And, you don't know. I took the classes, and, I was a perennial DC student in college, just to call it like it is. Posted about that on LinkedIn the other day. I think I had a 0.5 after my first semester, and my parents yanked me out of school. Ended up earning my way back and paying my way through school. I had to learn the hard way. But anyway, I did know I wanted to be in sales and marketing. Got a job at the largest agency in South Carolina right out of school. And so I've always been like one part. When you get into an ad agency, there's a lot of divisions now, but it typically was divided by, you're the creative people or you're the account service people.
Yeah.
And I got into account service, but I always had a flair for creativity to me, even though I was probably a little more type A at that time with like management and different things like that. And so it kind of, as I came up through the ranks, I was always in those creative meetings, like throwing out ideas, and the creatives kind of hate you for that at agencies. The idea tank belongs over here. You're the get it done tank. But I always had a little bit of that. And I definitely got to flex that more as I got more senior in my career, I could walk into the meeting and go, all right, not come up with the idea, but I've always been a good idea guy.
Gotcha.
And that's always helped in this career, especially now with clients. Like I get in a room with clients and, probably my greatest skill is just listening to them talk for 10 minutes. And then I can ideate very well from, whatever that challenge is.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. So let's dive into, if you're cool with it, a little bit more specific type stuff. So, like I mentioned at the outset, this show predominantly talks about real estate focused topics. So we've done marketing stuff before, and I'm just kind of curious to get your take. So we talked about branding. We talked about a lot of different things, and kind of like where to go, where your audiences are. So maybe talk about let's take like real estate agents as an example, or like a broker, because I think like I see selling title insurance, being the coolest guy in title insurance. I see a lot of people on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn that are realtors or brokers, and like their social media is kind of crap because like all it is just like pictures of listings, you know, and that's fine. Like if you have listings and you need to post them, I guess you would want to make sure that you're marketing those. But like you don't really see them, you don't really know much about them. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that, like how a real estate broker can kind of build up a personal brand to kind of make it more than just posting about listings.
Yep, absolutely. And look, some of the biggest names in the game, like I knew these, Riley and I were talking, like, and I knew, the focus with yours was real estate, and my immediate names kind of popped in my head. Tom Ferry, biggest name. He was in New York. He's now in Dallas. They moved to Texas, but the biggest trainer in real estate sales. He does courses, classes, verified on all the platforms, has hundreds of thousands of followers on YouTube. But he does real estate sales training. Ryan Serhant, who does $1 Million Listing. He's in New York. He's one of the perennial, real estate agents, but huge on social media. And if you go look at their social media profiles, and Ryan might be a little different because he will show some of his $1 Million Listings, but I would say at least every other post is them talking and sharing knowledge. And sharing perspective. And, Tom's not like some Tom Cruise, I mean, he's not a bad looking guy, but he's not Tom Cruise, but he gets on there and he provides authority. He shares knowledge, and he's a great speaker, but he's become a great speaker. He wasn't a great speaker when he started, I'm sure. Right. I've even seen his evolution, because he's really doubled down on social media in the last 2 or 3 years. I've known him for 5 years, and I went to a conference he spoke at, and he was really good. And I commended him, and I shared some messaging with him on Instagram, and he's always been really positive. But I've watched him triple down on his social media on Instagram just in the last couple of years. And he posts he goes live. The platform has so many capabilities, but this is Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Between sharing videos, sharing pictures, and going live where you just do organically with your smartphone. It's not some highly overproduced piece. There's so many avenues to share knowledge, where think about just the opportunity, because a lot of people have interest in real estate, and they don't understand every nuance of it. I'm 43 years old, and I knew one thing about title insurance until I talked to you. Right, no shit. That's the truth. But having you on, improved my knowledge. We talked a lot about Clubhouse, but we did talk about title insurance some. And so sharing that authority, sharing that knowledge in an everyday language, there's so much opportunity for what you could share. It baffles my mind that someone thinks the only thing they can do is share the shingles on the side of a house,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because one of the other things that I've seen some people do, which I think is interesting, is maybe and I guess this would be something that would have to be pretty hyper local. If you become the, man about town or woman about town, going to local businesses and doing all that kind of stuff. Is that another good way to try to build up credibility and that authenticity and try to grow that brand as a real estate, person?
1000%. I'm glad you brought this up. So, if I was a real estate guy, if I was doing real estate, look, the reality is, at least today, I think things are changing with how, the licensing and all that. And as it becomes democratized a bit, I know a lot of real estate agents hate some of the online stuff. I'd be embracing all of those tools. I think some have gotten better at than others. But look, I would become like in Greenville, where we're at. There's zip codes in every market, but the O5 is 29605. The O5, as it's known in Greenville, is where kind of the cool rich kids live, and they're not all rich, by the way. These aren't like multi-millionaires. It's just a nice area of Greenville.
Yeah,
it's right outside of downtown. I would literally become the O5 man. I might even, the O5 real man. I'd come up with a username. All I would do was focus in that zip code and become the guy. Are there guys already there? Yeah, I know who they are. I know every name of them, and I'm not even in real estate and they don't even do personal branding. I would crush it in real estate. Literally, if I quit, if this doesn't work out, it's worked for 20 years, but for some reason this fell apart.
All of a sudden,
I would crush real estate because no one's doing it. It's so untapped because they all fall behind. And look, I know you got to be a broker, and they work with the bigger companies for a little while, and I know they've got all these gatekeepers at the beginning. I would knock down those gates so fucking fast. I would literally be the king of O5 and crush. And it would take time. I'm not saying I respect all the guys around here. They know knowledge, they know the area, they have knowledge and all that, but none of them, they're doing it in spite of themselves, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
They're just doing it because they've done it so long and people know them. And that's how it takes time, but you can, and look, becoming an agent and becoming anything in real estate does take time. You kind of have to get through the gatekeepers. You kind of have to get with the larger people. They want to know that you've done it. You got to make connections and friends and all that. But all of that is the normal table stakes. You can pour gas on the fire if you build a personal brand and leverage it around hyper local. I would start there.
Yeah. So then the other thing that I think that would also kind of play into that is what we were talking about earlier, was just like finding out where your audience is, because I see a lot of people, and I think it kind of like it evolves over like who you're talking about within the real estate world. So for me, selling title insurance, it might be a little bit, my audience is going to be different than where the realtor's audience is. So like, is that something that you also have to kind of take into account, right? Because I see a lot of realtors that are promoting on Facebook, right? Because
Yep.
it kind of makes sense, because that demographic that's growing, like you mentioned before, is probably buying houses or whatever.
Yep.
Maybe even going into Instagram might be even better. But then to like market to those people, like for me to market to them, I can't really necessarily go to Facebook to market to the realtor, because they're not there to find business. They're just there to promote their stuff. So like, is that something that you see too, or is that something that you would say is bullshit?
A little bit of both. I mean, I
Yeah.
can understand the sentiment, but I still think you overcome it because, look, wherever there's attention, no matter why the attention is there, you have opportunity to gain and put your name in the hat, And, another one I'd throw out there is Nextdoor. So Nextdoor is big for real estate, that platform. So I would be looking there if I was a real estate agent, and any of the organic stuff. And look, I would even be, here's what I will say this, depending on your demographic, if it's like first-time home buyers, I'd be on TikTok doing videos, because look, that audience for 20 to 30-year-olds is absolutely all over TikTok. Yes, it's still more teeny, but like teenagers and stuff like that, but it's growing huge 20 to 30-year-olds. I would be trying to own that if you were trying to be first-time home buyers. If you're going after $1 million listings and all that stuff, then you got to go where that audience is. But if you're starting out and you're looking for white space, I'd be on TikTok doing instructional videos using just the TikTok app itself for how you edit it.
Right.
But yeah, look, but if you're going after real estate agents, you go where they are and you just stand out.
Right. Yeah, that's really all it kind of comes down to. So, all right. So let's keep it moving. I want to talk about Radical. So Radical's is how old? 3 years? Is that right?
Yeah, we'll be 3 in May.
3 in May. All right.
I'll be 44 in May, and Radical will be 3 in May.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like a baby. So at what point in your career did you say like, hey, I'm going to go do my own thing now and try to build this up? Was it after you had already kind of built up your own personal brand and you kind of had a good feeling about that?
It was really, I did I worked at agencies, large agency. I moved back to Greenville from Manhattan in 2014. I did a startup for a couple of years. It both succeeded and failed. Long story, not important, but worked for another agencies as a CMO for a year and a half, and as their chief marketing officer. And quite frankly, didn't. It's not that I didn't see eye to eye with the CEO. We believed in different strokes for different folks. I'll leave it at that. Not a bad guy. I appreciated the opportunity, but it awoken me to seeing what had been built there, in absence of some of the principles that I thought were crucial to exponential growth. I was like, they've done this without the way I would have done it, and they aren't really embracing what I think would pour gas on this fire. I just became like, okay, I'm going to go build my, own farm here.
Right.
And so it wasn't like I always had this. I can work for other people. Even to this day, like there's sometimes these entrepreneurs and people, don't get me wrong, I love working for myself. I would rather work for myself. I can work for myself. I know how to make money, but I don't mind working for other people. So it's not, sometimes there's just people that cannot work for other people. I mean, like
right.
they're just not cut out for it. No matter what, they always fuck it up, or they're always butting heads, and it's just because they're just, intolerable or whatever. And so I can work for other people, but I did see the opportunity, and I said, like, some of the things that weren't being embraced where I was at, I was like, all right, I'm going to go do this for myself. No different almost than my podcast. Like, I tried to start a podcast there, and I felt wait a second, you're being paid and you're doing this. Like, they saw it as a waste of time, or, all these things. And the irony of that for Radical, I started the podcast day one, when we started Radical. It's now, one of the fastest growing marketing podcasts. And it's probably brings in half our business.
Yeah.
So, and this is what I was trying to tell the previous person I worked for. I was like, you have no idea. Like, and it's such an incubator for ideas and relationships. Literally Raleigh and I were talking yesterday. We were just having a conversation about we had a few guests on that were all in a field. I don't really want to share this idea just yet. It's still incubating, but the notion is we'd had 3 guests that were all in a certain field that were all very similar. And it was just by happenstance, by chance. And I'm like, all right, there's something here. So we're going to do a group podcast with all of those guys, but I also see a bigger opportunity with leveraging that into other clients. And so it sharpens my skills because I have to talk about marketing, I have to verbalize it. We get to have wonderful guests like yourself on that we learn from and that we get to know, and we build relationships, and they wear our sweatshirts. And, but Radical's 3 years old, and we've gone from me in a co-work space. I now own the co-work space that you're seeing here. And we're probably the fastest growing agency in South Carolina.
Right. And I did want to talk about the podcast too. Is that something that like you encourage clients that you work with to do themselves? Because it just seems like for me, it's been a great way to kind of get my personal brand out there faster. I mean, I could just like hammer LinkedIn constantly because that is where most of my audience is. But at the same time, like there's only so many pictures or text posts that I can put up. And then I started doing stuff like this, and I use it as like a networking and a marketing tool. So is that something that you also, encourage your clients to start?
It's an interesting question and a good question. And the answer is I used to tell everyone to do it because I believe that everyone should do it.
Yeah.
I now reserve that for when I think they have the ability to stick with it.
Right.
Because there's certain clients I used to just say, you need to do this. They do it. And they wouldn't stick with it. And I knew they weren't going to stick with it, but I told them, so it wastes a lot of time. And now I use that. I'll bring it out with clients that, number one, do I think every person that owns a business should be doing it? Yes, absolutely. 100%. Will I say that at some point to them? Yes, I absolutely will. Will I push them into doing it and assist them in doing it? I tend to like be more, specific to just the people that I think have not that they're they're just personalities oozing out of them as much as I think they have the discipline to stick with it.
Right. Yeah, that's the key, right? Because like I think it's the statistic that most podcasts don't go past like the 7th episode, I think it is, and they just kind of like burn out because people that start them are like, "Oh, podcasting seems cool," and they start them and they're just like, "Oh my god, there's so much work that goes into this," And then like for me, head chef and chief bottle washer here at the Morning Spotlight, it's the recording, the editing, the scheduling, the marketing, the whole thing from start to finish. So I don't think people quite understand that, but that's a good point. I mean, if they can stick with it, then it's a great tool. It's been a great tool for me. I'm sure it's been a great tool for you, to kind of get the message out and to get connected with more people.
Yeah. It's called pod fade. I just learned that term this morning.
Pod fade.
Yeah. I didn't know that one. A guy that does PR for us brought that up. David Hawkins, really cool guy. But he helps us with some PR initiatives. And he's told me, I've never heard the term, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it happens. I mean, it's a real, I had only heard the word when I got on Clubhouse, which, we talked about on the Radcast, and didn't really know what that was. And then once I heard it explained back to me, I was like, oh yeah, I think that there were moments where I was fading. But then I kind of like, when I started just having real normal conversations with people, it's like a different conversation every time, and you just have more fun with it. So I'm always interested to hear like goals from people, because I think that especially with people like you that are like an entrepreneur that started their own business and have the podcast and all this other stuff going on, what are some things? I mean, obviously 2020 kind of threw, actually, let's start with that. Before we do goals, let's do 2020, then we'll do goals, then we'll do the wrap up. So 2020 obviously presented a lot of challenges for people. So what were, just being on social media, online, the social media content, was that just like the number one way to try to, the workaround, I guess, for your clients? Or were there other ways that you tried to get out in front, like help them get out in front of the people that they needed to reach?
Yeah. I mean, we're a digital agency. And so a lot of what we're doing, has been exponentialized by COVID and everything. We do a lot of e-commerce, a lot of the things everyone that we've been telling for 5 years they need to be doing. Suddenly they go, oh shit, we should have been doing that. And so our phone started ringing in some ways. But I will say this, and I'm proud of this. March came around, March, April, which were shitty for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We had probably 5 clients call us and go, we're not going to pay you. We don't some were restaurants, some were others. We were able to stomach that. Tolerate that. Blessedly. And I didn't lay off a single person. I hired people. When we took a nosedive and we started doing giveaways, we did merchandise. We gave back to the local United Way. I'm just one of those kind of karma people, like what goes around comes around. I won't say I've been that my whole life, but I've learned that in the last 10 years. And so we just doubled down and built an e-commerce store and merchandise here locally for Greenville. And because it helped us practice what we preach, which we built an e-commerce store, we built merchandise or designed merchandise, we did stuff, and it helped my people learn and understand how to run a business and how to do things that we're doing for other clients directly ourselves.
Right.
So there's that benefit. And then we were able to donate several $1,000s to local charities and stuff. And then sure enough, the phone starts ringing, mid-May to June. And we grew, probably 15% in spite of the pandemic. But for clients that we were working with, it was tough. Like ones that could have, afford to stay fighting the good fight. I was very real with them that, this is going to sting for a while, but I was also very honest. Like I had a couple clients that literally I said, they wanted to just pull the plug completely, and I was like, look, don't pay me for 3 months, but we're going to keep marketing because you got to stay out there. And we did that. And sure enough, they came through and saw the other side of it. And they didn't lose top of mind with their clientele because we kept them out there. They've since paid me back. And it was just important. It was easy for people to panic. And and I didn't say, well, you just need to keep paying us and suck it up, buttercup, that'd be one thing. No, I just said, look, that's fine. Don't pay us. My people are good. We're good. But you need to stay out there because this isn't going to last forever. And after that first, yes, certain businesses and restaurants, certain people just could never come back from it. But certain parts of business, had that 30, 45, 60-day dive, but then, people still needed their service, even in a COVID environment. And for those people that kind of stuck with it and then started to leverage some of the digital tools, the social medias, the e-commerce, we've built, I don't know how many e-commerce sites in the last year. And we got literally walking in here, I was responding to someone online, that wants a Shopify site. So it's here to stay, but it was definitely trying, but I think important for people that could, afford to kind of keep some amount of impressions out there and awareness out there, even if organically on social media.
Right. Awesome. All right. Now let's do goals. Let's maybe just take like the next year, right? Because 2021, I mean, it could be anything. It's going to be better than 2020 for a lot of reasons. So 2021, like what are some goals that you have for Radical and the Radcast?
Well, for Radical, what's interesting is we've been figuring out what we want to be when we grow up. We've done a lot of sampling our first couple of years. Like people have sampled us, we've sampled people as far as clients and things, like different industries. This is kind of our year of niching down. The riches are in the niches. And so we're going to niche down. And I can't sit here and tell you the niches. We're looking at 3 or 4 to narrow down to probably 2. But it's about niching down for us this year, over the course of the year. Also to get back on that trajectory train, like, for anybody watching the video, like we were growing like this, like straight arrow up growth, like before COVID.
Yeah.
We still grew, which we're proud of and very thankful for. It still grew, but it probably grew by half of what it was growing. We want that train back on the arrow, and going back to where we're like 25, 30% month over month growth, niching down for us into some specific areas, some that we're trialing now, some that we have client bases already in. And then look, my ultimate goal, I want Radical to be the most desired workplace in South Carolina. I want everyone in this industry to want to work at Radical.
Yep.
I want this to be a place that people want to work at. I want to nurture that. I just want to be. We have a really interesting thing going on. I never thought it would happen in an agency. Like we're an ad agency, and I grew up in the New York side of the agency, and even in South Carolina, and everybody burned it on both ends. We're really allowing our people to have a work-life balance, and while also giving them a really cool place to work. I am doing everything in my power to maintain that, and I just want this to be a place, because look, I got to work here every day too.
Yeah, right.
So selfishly, I want it to be cool for everyone else, because everyone else makes it cool for me.
Yeah.
And
it
so
can't suck if you're going to work there. It can't suck.
It just can't suck.
Yeah.
But I'm blessed to have really good people, and like, we've you're only as good as your people, and we have great people, and I'm trying to take care of them, trying to reinvest in the business and in our people as much as I can.
What about the Radcast?
Radcast is becoming its own little animal. It's grown a lot. We can get just about any guest we want right now on, which is, we're blessed from a business standpoint. We're getting the who's of CEOs and startups and all that. And it's an incubator for ideas, business, and just overall, I just like talking about marketing. And so it's an avenue. I want to see us on that top 20, business marketing list on Apple, on those things. I've got those kind of things under and I know where we are. We're probably in like the 5 to 7%, 95 to 93 percentile already, because they say, I read somewhere where it's like, if you have more than like 50 plays in a week, or like something really low.
Yeah.
Like you're in the 95 percentile if you have like more than 50 plays, and we've got like 10x that. So like, and so we're blessed with that, but I just want to continue to get our message out there, talk to great people, have great dialogue. And, I do have those kind of hit list things, like being on but I don't want to be on that list to go, hey, we're on that list. I want to be on that list because that means that we're sharing knowledge and information with that many more people.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Awesome. All right. So let's move the show into our closing segment, which we call Under the Spotlight, because this is the morning spotlight. So the spotlighters, which is what I call the spotlight listeners, have been listening to us talk for, I don't know, 45, 50 minutes about so far. So what is one thing you want the spotlighters to walk away from this episode with?
The value and importance of personal branding as it relates to growing your business. That would be the first and foremost thing. Um, Also know that entrepreneurship isn't easy. I don't know that I've explicitly said that, but it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes commitment. But it will all happen quicker if you will commit to your personal brand and being yourself and shining a light on what you do, the good, bad, and the ugly, for the world to see. It will all happen more quickly.
Awesome. Love it. And then finally, if people need to get more Ryan Alford, obviously he's everywhere. I follow him on basically every platform. So you can go to Instagram. I know that, all that. Are there any other places that you want people to go to kind of consume more Radical, Radcast, all that stuff?
I'm starting to get more involved on TikTok. I think I'm getting verified there. They contacted me. So that's Ryan.Alford on TikTok. We try to stick to the venue, like the medium. I didn't want to get on there until I could do video and content that was appropriate for that. So we're finding that balance. But if you want to really keep up with anything and everything, at Ryan Alford on Instagram, I mean, between stories and posts, I mean, I'm just religiously there. And then LinkedIn, it's definitely growing for me as far as, how much I'm on there posting and things like that. But you can pretty much watch my whole life on Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, I can attest to that. I'm on there all the time. And I always, like, Ryan Alford is one of the first ones that always pops up on my little, story chain, and then the first ones that pop up on the posts. So yeah, definitely he's there. So you can kind of, you can go find him there for sure. So that is going to wrap up our show, Spotlighters. I'm going to make sure that I put obviously all my contact information in the show notes as well. The website is themorningspotlight.com. And the email is themorningspotlight@gmail.com if you want to reach out to me or the show, or if you want to get connected to Ryan. I'm sure that we can kind of make a connection there and take it from there. So Ryan, again, thank you so much. This was awesome. Glad we can kind of do a little home and away guest swap here. So thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, brother. Anytime. And you are, without question, the coolest guy in Talent Insurance.
Love it. Love it. And then next time I'm in South Carolina, I'm coming, and then we're going to record an episode. I don't even care what it is. I just want to sit in that studio and, just talk about whatever. I don't even care. So see you there.
Love it, Mike.
Awesome. All right, Ryan, thank you so much. And everybody else, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.